Good evening and welcome to BronxTalk. As the calls for open government and increased voter participation get louder, in February, the Department of City Planning announced the creation of a Community Planning and Engagement Division, the agency's first new division since 2016. They say it'll transform the way city planning works with communities to ensure that voices are at the center of all planning work. With an eye towards engaging young people in city planning, they've developed a curriculum for students from the Bronx's Laboratory School of Finance and Technology to teach them civics and government, all in hopes of getting them involved now and in the future. That's our show for tonight. So we'll start. Please join me in welcoming the Assistant Director of Civic Engagement at the Department of City Planning. It is Connie Chan. Nice to have you with us, Ms. Chan.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
And later on in the program, we will have a teacher of government from the lab school and a student, which is always, of course, a treat for all of us. But for now, welcome to Connie Chan from the Department of City Planning. So let's just talk about this new project and what was it that inspired the Department of City Planning to say, hey, we ought to do this? I mean, I already seeded the clouds with it, but what's your thought?
I think, we have always been having conversations for as long as I've been at City Planning about, wouldn't it be great if we could do this? Wouldn't it be great if this happened? And
this being getting the community engaged in the plans.
X, Y, and Z ideas. One of the specific ideas that I know a lot of people have talked about over the years is, can we engage with youth more regularly? We have done a lot of great engagement work, and we have interacted with and heard from youth, but those opportunities have not been so ongoing, I would say, and those are a lot of really exciting moments I think that planners in city planning have to engage with youth. And so
it's been done informally in the past.
It's been done with certain initiatives and studies as kind of one-off things that have been really wonderful ways for our planners to learn from people that we don't hear from normally. And so during the pandemic, we had a lot of conversations around what do we want to be doing differently? Who's not at the table? Where do we want to focus our resources on? And youth was something that across the board, everyone agreed, like it's true, they're not well represented on community boards. They don't come out to the meetings for very practical reasons and other reasons, that there is a huge segment of the population that has a lot at stake that is really not present on a regular basis, and we should do something about that.
Talk to me about decision making and where these young people would fit in that. I mean, a project of some sort or an idea of some sort often involves corporations, the mayor, big people with big money. Where do young people fit into that dialogue?
I mean, in my opinion, young people don't fit.
That's why we ask.
They don't fit in any place any differently from yourself or myself. In terms of the decision making of the city, it's not like a linear process. If you have an idea, step one, go to this person, and then step two, they will email this person. Like, there's no linear process. There are a lot of different ways to get your voice out. And so I think that, we see students as, they could be on the community board, which is the very formal piece of civic infrastructure to connect residents to city agencies and decision-making bodies. They could form relationships and advocate with their elected officials of different kinds, and that's a very, valid, fruitful way. They could self-organize and start being loud and sending out emails and communications. There are so many things that they could do that people across New York City do all the time. And so I think that, we don't see youth as being any different, but we at City Planning wanted to hear from them more.
There is an effort, and I can't say if it's citywide, but I know in the Bronx there's an effort to get more young people on the community boards, and that is interesting. I don't want to exclude other people because we deal with projects on this program all the time, and people say, well, how come they don't listen to the community, that kind of thing. So we are going to talk about youth today, but I'm just curious about the nature of that kind of input. Do you feel, because you seem certainly open to it, that the department is getting sufficient input or have enough structures to get input from general community people, or are there going to be other initiatives you think in the long run for adults as well?
Yeah, I think that there is for land use decisions, there's a very formal process that's laid out in the city charter, which is the Euler procedure. And so there are points where people can enter into that process, make their voices and their opinions known. we have always been working to kind of expand the entry points for people to participate and inform planning decisions in advance of ULURP. Like, we've always wanted to push the boundary on, can you get involved earlier? Can you be aware earlier? What is your voice? Can you form that earlier? And can we take that into account earlier in the process? And so I think that that's really where this program kind of comes along to say, you know, even outside of a specific project, there doesn't have to be a development project going on right here.
For you to have input.
That's right. Can we just have a dialogue and hear what are your ideas? What are your concerns? What's top of mind for you? Just because in planning and policy making, like, knowing what is going on for people is really central to that work.
Right.
And so can we just have a space to have dialogue even, which is very valuable.
And of course, you're talking in the Bronx, and right now the dialogue is in place at the Kingsbridge Armory for a very similar, now this is coming out of EDC, you'll be involved eventually, I'm sure, but that they're running a series of workshops and those things to engage people and have their input. And then, of course, the Cross Bronx Expressway, and those hearings, as I understand, have already begun. We shouldn't say hearings because they're
It's
really
just an engagement.
meetings and engagement.
That's right.
You know, people, I've been sitting in this chair a long time. People of the Bronx have always been sensitive, maybe more sensitive than other boroughs to those kinds of things. Wait a minute, they're doing, don't dump on the Bronx. They're doing stuff to us, not with us. So, certainly with the Armory and the Cross Bronx, I think that's healthy. Let's just talk about this curriculum that you developed for, I called it the lab school. I don't know if that's appropriate, but what was behind it, and how does the curriculum work? And then we'll talk about the potential to expand it.
I think what's important to share is the genesis of this program is that, we oftentimes hear from the community, like, people, whether it's city government, private property owners, you're coming to us with a baked idea, and you're just asking us to do the check mark or do the thumbs up, do the thumbs down. We are not part of the process of creating what that is and informing the vision. And so I think the genesis of this program was very intentional. We had an idea for what we wanted to do, with the end goal being, let's engage students, have them know how powerful their voices be, and give them the information so that they can figure out how to voice that.
And certainly, I mean, they're in high school now. These are the student we're going to meet in just a moment is a senior in high school, and this is a curriculum for seniors. And I've heard that it's a nice idea because seniors in many cases have checked out. So now they give them a reason to listen, I was a senior at DeWitt Clinton High School, I know. But it gives them a reason to participate. The educational component is very interesting to me. So what is in that curriculum that teaches young people, and they could go to college and study it, and of course maybe one day even get involved if they're so interested. But what is in there educationally, or what were the agendas in there as it was created?
So the core curriculum is really focused on what I would say is 3 topics. So the first is kind of, how does the city work in the context of urban planning? Like, many of us in the planning field didn't hear about the field of urban planning until we were in our 20s, in some cases our 30s.
And some cases never. People
that's right.
have opinions. Certainly in the Bronx we have opinions, but it may not be based on something that actually learned about how the structure, where does the community board fit in this dialogue, for example.
That's right. But at its heart, every one of us in the city, every one of us is a planner because we have concerns and ideas about our neighborhood.
Don't we?
So the core is, the core curriculum is 3 things. The first is, what is urban planning in New York City? What is the city made of? How does the city plan for itself and its evolution over time? And so that's one piece of the core curriculum. The second piece that we feel is very important is urban design. What is urban design? Why is it so important? How does design impact how we interact with and experience the city every day? How can it make our lives easier, healthier, more equitable, et cetera? And the third piece, which is kind of the linchpin, is really advocacy and decision making. What is the landscape of decision makers here in New York City that can be, tapped into, because they feed into direct decision making, direct funding. So is that elected officials? It is community boards? Is it city agencies? All of these people, local groups, advocates, tenant homeowners associations, like, what is the landscape of decision making, both formal and informal, so that students can say, great, if I have an idea 5 years into the future, I really care about something and I'm pissed off about something, I know that there are different venues that I can go to air that.
As I understand, last year, which was the first year, this is now the second year, we're about to conclude the second year of it, seniors from the Bronx Laboratory School of Finance and Technology went to St. Mary's Park, and they said, well, wait a minute, how come it's not clean, and no safety, and those kinds of things. And they talked about affordable housing and the jail coming to the South Bronx and all those kinds of things. That's what you want them to start thinking about. That's the germ you're trying to stimulate there.
So the core curriculum that I describe is constant. You know, you're right, we've just completed the second year. In both years, the students were surveyed to say, what are your particular interests? Planning can touch anything.
Oh, that's interesting.
And so those 3 topics you mentioned came out of student interests. And this year, similarly, a student survey was conducted, and we picked 3 topics as a way to focus their energies, because the final product, if you will, that the students are responsible for producing is an idea. What is your own idea for something that you want to address? Each individual
student, or they work in groups?
They organize into teams,
into teams,
generally speaking. And so what is your project focused on? And they pick the themes that
So
they
it's a
focus
12-week pilot course. And again, we're going to meet a teacher and a student who's participating in this in just a moment. And it's only one school. I mean, I didn't count how many Bronx schools we have. We have many. And are there plans to expand it? Would you move it to lower grades and get the kids thinking about it earlier so that when they get to the 12th grade, they can really even accomplish more? Like, what are the plans for doing this? I mean, I know BronxNet Television is all behind this kind of concept.
So the first year, the program was 10 weeks. This second year, it was 7 weeks. I think one of the really gifts that we had with partnering with the Laboratory School of Finance and Technology was the gift of time. Like, we thought that a school would say, great, come and do one after-school session with us. Come to our career day. And they said, we'll give you
Well, good for them.
Which was something that was unanticipated, and we certainly obviously jumped on that to co-create something with a meaningful amount of time. Having said that, I think we recognize that not every school is going to have that ability to say, here, let's work together on something for 7 weeks.
I'm guessing, I don't want to speak for any of our high schools, but I'm guessing the senior years are a little looser than the earlier curriculums.
I could not speak on behalf of the DOE, but maybe, hopefully.
We do have an invitation to the chancellor to come in, so we'll have that dialogue with him. So then, is there a timeline now to when to expand it? Certainly, we want more of the schools.
So I think right now we're in the stage where we're really evaluating what have we created, what have we co-created with the school over the past 2 years. I think we have always had in mind the idea of scalability. Obviously, we want to be engaging more young people in this, but what does that mean? Is a 7-week program realistic? I don't know.
So they're going to do a little work to figure it out.
We are in the stage to try and evaluate how can we build upon this, but also scale it so that we can involve more young people.
Make a note, Gary votes yes on proposition expansion. I want to see it get out there. Connie Chan, Assistant Director of Civic Engagement at the Department of City Planning, thank you so much. You're going to be excited, like I am, to meet a teacher and a student, right?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much.
We'll take a break. We'll be joined by the teacher and student who are part of the program. Don't go away.
You can talk to me if you're feeling sad.
Thanks for hearing me out, bro.
Whenever you need to talk, I'm here, okay?
Kids!
I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk about it.
I don't want to talk about it.
I don't want to talk about it.
Families don't have to talk about everything, but they should talk about how to plan for an emergency.
Kids, you all right?
This family's prepared. Get tips and resources to make your family's emergency plan. Go to nyc.gov/readyny or call 311 for more information.
Okay, back with you on BronxTalk. Please join me in welcoming a 12th grade government teacher at the Laboratory School of Finance and Technology. It is Ms. Emily Haines. Nice to have you with us, Ms. Haines.
Thank you.
And a student from the school. Nice to see Lisyanna Bisono. Nice to have you with us, Lisyanna.
Thank you for the opportunity.
We're really excited to have you. Let's just start with, teacher, how's it going? I mean, we heard what it is. How's it going, and how's it going for you?
It's going amazing.
Amazing.
The interesting
Make a
thing
note.
I learned about city planners is they are amazing curriculum planners, and they are amazing at taking feedback and listening.
Well, I guess that's part of the nature of the job. We heard that from Ms. Chan. What are the things that you think have been most valuable for the students?
The one thing that's most valuable for the students is to have our DCP friends come in. So there are about 6 of them that actually come into my
They
classroom
come into the school. That's part of it. I wasn't
on a
aware of
regular
that.
basis, which is fantastic because I tell my students every day that they're amazing geniuses and I love them and they can do anything. So they've started to tune me out. But when our city planning friends come in and they validate their ideas and they validate their questions, my students, the lights keep going on in their brains and they keep coming up with more and more amazing things because they're having these city planners come in and tell them, yeah, you want to do that? Great. Tell me how you think it should go.
And then you break it down and talk about the nature of the city and all that. Lisyanna, don't listen to this. Talk to me about the nature of students. I said that seniors sometimes are checked out by now. We're into late April, did the students approach this enthusiastically, cautiously, or yet another day, I got to deal with this, I'm ready to get out of here? I mean, talk a little bit realistically about the students, and how many students are involved, by the way?
Well, I'm lucky to have about 75 students. And
75, wow.
Yeah, so they've had a whole range of responses as students do,
As you
and
might expect. Yeah.
that's how it goes.
And in the long run, what are you planning now? Or maybe I should ask Lisyanna that stuff. So let's do that.
Sure.
Nice to have you with us, Lisyanna.
Thank you.
Was this something when you heard about it, you said, oh, I always wanted to do this? Or you were like, well, that's kind of interesting. I mean, where were you at before we started this program?
Well, for me, it was pretty exciting. To me, it was like a new chapter of a new way that I was gonna learn. To me, it was pretty much, something that I did not know about a lot. I always heard it in the news, but to me, it was never something that I knew about. So it was pretty much exciting.
In other words, when you say something that you never knew about, you mean how the city works, how things happen, like things in your neighborhood, et cetera, et cetera.
Right. Like I always knew we always have these issues around my community, but I never really knew how, city planning fell into the different parts of those issues in our communities.
And even how we got to that place. If we can ask you, you're in the Bronx?
Yes,
In
I am.
Which neighborhood?
St. Anne's.
And down there in St. Anne's.
Yes.
And
around
what are
school.
the issues, aside from the curriculum, aside from school and everything else? You walk outside your door in the morning, what do you see that you say, well, maybe this could be dealt with?
I mean, there's a lot of things. I can start.
I'm well aware. It keeps me busy every week, I
can
promise you.
definitely start with the fact that we have so much trash around us. Our
Trash.
communities are so, dirty. And I feel that some of those things, even having just a lot of people, the way that we are compacted as well, that's 2 of the, a lot of problems that we see on an everyday basis. But in all honesty, I would say that those are pretty much 2 of the things that I see on an everyday basis.
Is the trash and then the crowdedness.
Yes.
Have you brought these things up, and has there been dialogue? Is this the kind of thing that you and your teammates are working on?
So my group worked on something similar, but more so for transportation. So we did transportation and sustainability, and where we talked about the 2 and 5 train stations and the 4 as well, and how,
At what, 149th Street?
yes.
Uh-huh.
So we came up with 3 things. Our project was called
I
Train.
hope people are taking notes on this, because there could be something real important here. Go ahead.
So our project name was Swift, Safe, and Sustainable, in which
Swift,
we were
safe, and sustainable, the
Yes.
triple S.
Yes, that's literally how we had it in our project. And what we were trying to accomplish was have a more sustainable community to where our trains were more, taken care of as far as having more cleaning crews and everything else, as well as also having more people who were there to ensure that everything was going well in the stations.
You understand? I mean, the first, if anybody would present that to me, I would say, well, who's going to pay for it? I mean, either you need more people, or you got to get into the Department of Sanitation or the MTA, depending on who manages it. That, I'm assuming, the kind of thing that you learned.
Yes.
And added.
So of course we added some
how
people.
How are we going to do it? Please clean my subways.
No, of course we definitely looked at different elections that we're gonna be essential and helping us to achieve those things. So some of the people that we said were the president Barrow, some of the sitting councils. We also said that the MTA, of course, because we can't accomplish nothing if we don't talk to the main, heads of the people
who operate there.
Exactly.
And so those were the directions that you would go. I would add,
Right.
of course, state officials, because they control
Right.
the MTA, which I guess you know. Students, she's picked it up, right? Do you think students, and we'll ask you this in a moment, but do you think
course.
students are going to want to get into this after they graduate? By the way, there are some photos that we have. We could show some of the photos of the students walking around from last year. We don't have photos yet from this year. But do you think students will want to engage in this in the future? Do you get this? I realize if you have 75, not all 75 are going to become planners.
No.
But what do you think this will impact them?
Yeah.
like?
So in their reflections, students have been saying a number of things. I mean, some of them say they do want to get into city planning. I had a student who said she appreciated the project because our city planning friends said that her talents might be useful in the field of architecture, and she was really impacted by that. And then I've had students who, I always survey them. Are you likely to vote? So I think that this could impact them in a number of ways. If they may not go into city planning or into architecture or urban design, but they may be more likely to vote. They may be more likely to attend a planning meeting.
Or even sit in on the community board, or as we said, now they're looking for young people to be on community boards.
Absolutely. So I think, we also talk about how advocacy organizations play a role, and at our city planning fair, so one of the best parts is that our DCP friends invite city officials and advocacy organizations to see the students present in a science fair-like environment, in which the students absolutely shine in front of all those invited guests. And so there are a lot of skills that are transferable.
I mean,
in other ways
I'm
as well.
obviously big on presentation and being able to do that and present not only to mom and dad and maybe some of your classmates and a teacher, but to city officials to say, this is what we really believe in. And I'm assuming, Ms. Chan certainly expressed that she was inspired by it. Then for you, do you take them out on trips? Like Lisyanna was just talking about, the 149th Street stations. I say that plural because there's more than one. Did you go with them, or do you say like, well, you guys go, or how does that process work? And we saw, as I said, we just saw some of those photos just now.
Yeah, it's a combination. Actually, our city planning friends are great field trip planners too, who knew? But they also have great connections. So this year we were able to do an initial site visit to the hub on 149th Street to talk about, some of the principles
Who
of
did
urban
that
design.
tour? That's so interesting to me.
All of the students came, and we had enough of our friends from city planning to divide the students into small groups of about 8 to go out and look around and think about how things work.
You went on that?
Yes, I did.
What was it like? How was it?
To me, it was pretty much awesome. I feel
Awesome.
that, yes.
So that you ride the train, you know what it's like to ride the train, but here was a chance to really uncover it. It was
Yes,
a
it's
funny
different.
thing to say about the subway. Okay.
It's much different because, as an everyday rider, I feel that every day I ride the train, but I don't think about it, And even just walking around the area.
Try not to think
it's not,
about it.
I mean, of course, but those are things that we ignore on an everyday basis. So being able to, go with some of the city planners that were there with us, it was pretty much a different way to look at it. It was a different way to look at the infrastructure of buildings, the way that things were built on the outside, and also just thinking about how certain things were made and the reason why they were made that way.
Number one, why they were made that way, certainly in the Bronx and in New York City. It's the oldest city in America, essentially. And the buildings, if they're 60 years old, like my building, for example, it's going to need to be rehabbed. Do you think, I'm going to ask you the same thing that I asked the teacher, do you think your classmates responded to it? Do you think they were inspired by it? I mean, how do you view it?
To me, in many ways, yes. Many students were definitely inspired.
Like,
I
like
feel
you
that,
felt like you had people with you.
of course. At the beginning, I won't lie to you. There was a lot of people who took the project as just,
Another day
even
in
myself,
school.
I include myself, as just taking a grade for it. But as we came to an end and, being able to present to all those people on the day of the presentations, it was very much, it was real. It was like, people actually care about these things, and that was enough to motivate you to think, oh, wow, like this is actually something that people look forward to. So, seeing those reactions of the people who were there, it was pretty much inspiring. And
So,
in
so
a
that
way,
you felt, this is very interesting to me because it's what we started the show with. So you felt like, even though at the moment you're not sitting on the city planning commission, but you felt like you had some input. The more knowledge you had, you felt like, wow, maybe, I eventually I could do something with this.
of course.
Wow. Did it make you, Ms. Haines mentioned that it maybe made you want to vote. I mean, did you think more now about saying, now I'm guessing you're too young still to vote,
Yes, I am.
but you understand now the importance of it,
Of course I do.
more so than before.
Yes.
Let's wrap it up. You like the idea of expanding it to, if they're going to expand it to other schools, what do they need to know about it? Or do you have any, we're going to run their investigation right here. What else do they need to do with it, or is it good as it is? Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think the curriculum is great as it is. I think, being a teacher for 25 years, I think different teachers like different things. So I think having flexibility within the curriculum is
Will
always
help
good.
you expand it. Do you think it'll expand at your school, and is it worth expanding to lower grades?
I think it is worth expanding to lower grades in various ways, and the city has a Civics for All initiative, and I think this fits very nicely with the Civics for All initiative.
And it helps them be better students. I mean, listen, our students and you too, and even the teachers were looking at screens for 2 years. And at this point, in my mind, and every time I see students out, that's what I want to see, especially in the BX. I mean, we got so much for people to see. Lisyanna, thank you so much. You think you're going to get into city planning or some aspect of this as you get out?
Definitely considering it.
Okay, that's good. You just keep marking your check boxes. You do fine. Emily Haines, thank you so much for taking care of Bronx kids. It's really important to us. Thank you.
Thank you.
And also to Connie Chan, who's with the Department of City Planning. And that will do it for Bronx Talk this evening. We thank our guests. We thank them for their passion for the borough of the Bronx and for doing better. We thank our producer, Rebecca Hemick. Our director is Nick Marrero. And also, of course, thanks to the cast of thousands who work with us in the studio. And next week, we'll see you. Good night.